Alright guys, so what we're gonna do is essentially make my first broadcast, or Slootcast ever. I'm just basically gonna give commentary through each of the fights. I'm just gonna watch them on my little replay screen here in Vegas, and maybe kind of give commentary as to what I was doing, what the raid was doing, what I should have done if I fucked up, or if somebody else fucked up. Try to drop some hints, tell you how the bosses went and stuff like that. And I'll just, loop this around, hopefully help some people out who are asking questions about fights that I get PMs about, stuff like that. So let's get into it. I'll pause the video, obviously, as necessary during it, but hopefully I won't won't be paused too long. So you guys will be able to see a consistent kind of thing. Also ahead of time, this is a recapture of a capture kind of thing. So the quality's not going to be as great, obviously, as I would be streaming live, but hopefully it should be good enough that you guys actually see what's going on and everything. Alright, so let's get to Jin'rokh first. 25 rogue Jin'rokh. There will also be times where I'm just not saying anything because there's nothing to say. The idea behind this fight was, obviously, you pull, and you can control which statue you get thrown at, which is why we have the 4 world markers around the room. You can control also who gets tossed based on who starts tanking first. So the tank that starts tanking first is actually not the one that's going to get tossed. So we had our off-tank tank, and then you see I'm going to taunt off very soon. I did. And then being furthest away from the blue marker, that statue is going to get us thrown there, which should happen momentarily. Once you're thrown there, you can human trinket it, you can bubble it, you can brew it, you can whatever you want it, as long as it gets you out of a stun. As you'll see right here, boom, I'm out. People can't stand under you when you get there, otherwise you can get AoE damage on them and you stun them. So what's going to happen is the pool starts growing. I'm not going to bother explaining all the basic mechanics of the fight because that's not what this is all about. So people still need to run their orbs out, get the fuck out of the raid, and in order to min-max damage, we had the tanks kind of moving the boss to one side like you see to the right, while the raid remained behind the boss on the left. This ensured that everybody's in the pool getting damage, including the tanks with Vengeance. Obviously there's a lot of damage. And then you just kind of always stay along the edges of the pool to make sure that, you have enough time to run out if an orb comes on you or anything like that. And for ionization, you can run out quickly and get dispelled. So you just keep doing that. You make sure you drop the orbs in a cubby, like those little areas on the side, which you'll see again soon. And during Lightning Storm, this kind of centered donut area, which is marked with the yellow marker, generally never gets lightning strikes on them. Like the actual strike doesn't hit the area, it's only the little orbs that go through it that you need to play Frogger with. So you just do that, play Frogger. Just got hit by one there. Just try not to get hit by them, obviously. If you do, pop a CD or heal yourself or something. And then the rest of the fight is rinse repeat. So now we drag him to the red marker. I get thrown again. It should have been the other tank ideally, assuming they're human or can get out of a stun. Luckily I can bubble, which I don't think I do here. Oh, because I LOH'd, okay. But you can bubble that. And then you just rinse repeat here again. In terms of the tank swapping, the idea is every time he puts his debuff on the tank with lower stacks or no debuff obviously needs to taunt off and start tanking. You should be tanking in the pool if you can, aka if you don't have the stacks on you and you're actively tanking, you should be doing it in the pool, because increased damage is a no-brainer, and increased healing. You can kind of see behind the boss, and I can't really see from this angle, but the cubby behind the boss, there's 4 of them around the room. That's where people run their orbs out and drop them, just to make sure that those fissures, see the lightning fissures in the corner, just to make sure that those don't get eaten by the pool because they pulse for AoE damage. Yeah, so soon enough we're going to have another lightning storm, same thing. Melee are going to be in that little donut area dodging so you can still DPS the boss. Ranged are going to go in the cubby where they've been dropping fissures. So like from my perspective right now, they're behind me in the cubby safe because lightning strikes don't spawn there and you only have to dodge bolts from the front, whereas melee have to dodge it from all sides. So same thing here again. See, I just got the debuff. The other tank's about to taunt off me. Lorraine or Dot. Should be taunting. I guess he didn't taunt that time. Anyway, he should have taunted by now. Okay, there it is. So he taunted, he got thrown. He's going to get out of his stun. The way the timing lines up is it's basically prior to a throw, debuff on one tank, the other tank taunts, gets thrown, and then he puts the debuff on the same tank that didn't get thrown. So that tank takes 2 debuffs. So the guy that gets thrown in the pool essentially taunts and tanks the boss for the start of the pool. That's really the whole gist of the fight. It's very simple. I mean, it's meant to be simple. It's the beginning of the instance. In terms of CD usage, I mean, I'm sure I didn't play optimally. I can already see my Sacred Shield's not up right now. But just, use CDs as needed. Holy Avenger is obviously better for this because you're tanking on and off. You don't have a high percentage of tanking uptime. It's just 50 technically. So it lends itself to HA. You can see the cubby in the back there. That's where people run their orbs out, and that's where they just were prior for the most recent Lightning Storm too. So that's really the whole fight. Not much more to say. Pretty simple, like I said. We'll get to Horadon in a moment. I think I left the clip of the video a bit longer just so you guys can actually see the loot. Ugh, that axe. Too bad humans don't have axe racial. Yeah, not much more to say. Control where you get thrown for the statues. Alright, Horadon time. This fight, technically, obviously you can, well, obviously we 2-tank it, but whatever tanks on Horadon, and it doesn't have to be a paladin, it's just easier with a paladin because you can bubble your own debuff, but you can also bop the debuff off. So you don't really need tank rotations, but assuming they ever change it in the future, or you do it the way it's meant to be done, you should be taking like 8 to 10 stacks a tank, or having one tank do one door, and then tank swap on the way to the next door, and then that tank takes the ads, and then so on and so on. So the easier way to do it really is just to solo tank it, and just deal with the debuffs. Like I said, about every 8 to 10, especially with Unbreakable Spirit, you can just easily bubble it off, and that's it, no problem. The other tank just deals with all the ads coming in at the door, gets MDs on the big ads, and then you mark one ad, make sure you nuke it down, try to kill it prior to the other 2 jumping down, which we didn't there, but you can see Skull on the side is about to die. The other 2 ads just spawned. And then you kill the next 2 ads. The important thing at the door is to kill the special ads, there's always 3 of them, right away, as soon as possible. And then once the Dynamancer comes down, make sure you have interrupts on it right away. This video's chopping up a bit. Make sure you have interrupts on the Dynamancer right away. Try to get it in 50% as quickly as possible so you don't have to deal with interrupts. And then obviously channel the orb on Horadon. In terms of little tanking tricks and vengeance and all that, you really need to have your AM, or whatever it may be, depending on what tank you are, for every swipe, every, not swipe rather, but every puncture he does, because at 8, 9, 10 stacks, like, it actually does a fair bit amount of damage. So like, I have my Shield of the Righteous up for every time I can do it. Obviously for me this is a Divine Protection fight, because I'm tanking 100% time on the boss, which lends itself to the highest SOTR uptime. So my SOTR counter is in the right side of my screen. Whenever you see that like half circle with the number in it, that's my SOTR. There it is, 3 seconds. And then again in a second it'll go up. If I don't put it up, then usually I'll put up some other form of mitigation, which you can see along the bottom of my screen. That circle is my Sacred Shield. See, I just popped AD there. The idea is, and it's something you should get in the habit of doing for higher level tanking, especially against bosses that hit hard like Darumu, and I'll explain it more when we get to that too, is to chain your mitigation, not just active mitigation, but externals, personals, etc. See, for instance, my shield just wore off there. I popped Bark Skin, build up some Holy Power while the other mitigation is running, and then use that. So there you go. So there's AM again, AM again. I just have a bunch of chain AMs again, while the cooldowns on my actual cooldowns are rolling. In the meantime, I can keep popping AM, which Divine Purpose is really good for. RNG is bad sometimes, obviously that's what Divine Purpose is, that's the downside of it. But if it's bad, you have more than enough tools to cover, whatever problems you're having. You can call for an IB, you can call for anything you need. In terms of extra damage output on this fight, which is easily survivable, you should stand in, aside from his normal melees and triple puncture, you should stand in the Actually, I'll tell you that part in a second. I just want to focus on this gate before we do it. This gate is a bit tougher because those stupid Venom Priests do an AoE bolt, and they do a fusion, so it's like double the bad adds kind of thing. So you really need to assign melee interrupts on, or not just melee, but any interrupts as soon as the priests go down. They ideally can't get any casts off. It's a lot of AoE damage. The effusions need to be interrupted as well and killed quickly. So make sure you assign people to interrupt every single priest. Obviously interrupt the Dynamancer, and interrupt the effusions that spawn too, and then just kill them as quickly as possible. It's a bit of a nasty gate, but that's the way it is. I'll also explain this gate quickly before saying the little tank tricks for it. This gate, the normal ads that come out, like the dumb ads or whatever, like the warriors and all that, like you can see, they don't have aggro. They're just kind of zombies that run around hitting people and putting diseases on them. There's nothing you can do about them. You can grip them as far as I remember, and I believe they're tauntable, but generally they hold no threat and they focus. So the idea is to have the raid a bit closer together kind of thing, so that you can still get some AoE, you can pestilence them, stuff like that, but obviously don't stack the entire raid, because the main ads in here, the frozen warlords, put an orb down that slows people and does damage over time. So if you have the whole raid stacked on them, you're just going to get damage pulsed on them. So as you can see, the tank's in the corner where that skull is in the far distance. You basically, every time an orb spawns, you move like 5 to 10 yards to keep DPSing. New orb spawns, 5 to 10 yards to keep DPSing, and so on. And you just kite in like a big kind of circular area until they're dead, and until Horadon spawns. See, the Dynamancer just spawned, we're going to channel it. Anyway, what I was saying about the tanking tips and tricks, right here, this double swipe, as you can see I'm eating it. The double swipes that he does when he's targeting you, like as part of his rotation, those you can stand in. Make sure you have some form of mitigation up usually. Those you can stand in, and he usually does a puncture right after, usually. You kind of get to learn when he does the punctures once you pull it enough. It's usually after a charge, and then usually after a double swipe on you, and then sometimes before a double swipe. So he does it about every 8 to 10 seconds, something like that, so just make sure you have mitigation up for that. But by standing in the double swipes that he targets on you, you actually increase the amount of vengeance you get. Man, that bagel's not settling well. You actually increase the amount of vengeance you get, so which means more damage, more healing, right? Now, the reason I don't stand in the double swipes that are charged on players is because those ones actually either hit for less, or I mean, I assume they hit for less, but either way, they actually decrease your vengeance. See, this one I'm standing in because it was targeted on me, but the charge ones, like I just had prior, I move for, because they just decrease my vengeance overall. And your vengeance isn't going anywhere when he's charging. It's a 20-second buff, and it doesn't decay over time. So there's no point taking something smaller damage. The other main thing you really have to be careful on this fight, and will kill you, like I've died to this, is when he does his dire call, which he just did there, the raid-wide AoE. On top of a melee, on top of a triple puncture. Like, that'll one-shot you, essentially. So you need to have your active mitigation or some kind of mitigation up for when a dire call comes up, because for some reason it always somehow lines up with a triple puncture, and, like, it'll shit in your mouth. So make sure you have a mitigation up for every dire call, every minute or whatever. At this last gate, the special ads are bears, like mounted Amani war bears. When the bear ads are out, the bears do a frontal cleave, so nobody can stand in front of them. Once you kill the bear, it spawns a shaman, and that shaman curses people, which needs to be decursed because it's really nasty. And he also, what else does he do? He drops a totem, right? Just like every other gate that drops shit on the ground that you need to move out of that's there for the rest of the fight, this gate happens to be a nature damage totem, and you just move out of that. Make sure you focus on this gate, one bear down. One bear down, and then the shaman prior to the other bears, because you don't want a bunch of shaman running around dropping totems and cursing the raid. You want to try to control that as much as possible. So what happens here, once that gate is done and everything's dead, we move the boss to the center of the room, and the warlord spawns. This is where I guess the damage really ramps up. As a tank on Horadon right now, as the warlord is spawning, which I just did right there, you essentially want to clear your stacks. Like, you don't want to have your triple puncture stacks when the warlord's alive, because there's enough raid damage and other shit going on that that the healers might lose sight of you. You might get hit really badly, unfortunately, once with the triple puncture and the cry, and then the warlord's AoE. I've died a couple of times to that. So you just have to be careful. Okay, so there's the Warlord. Your off tank picks it up, stacks it beside the boss server, and can cleave everything. That's your new heroism. And then you go nuts destroying the Warlord. You can technically move into Horadon's boss model right now and DPS the Warlord as well. Probably would help. The sketchy thing is sometimes Horadon turns with you, obviously, depending on the angle you're facing, and then you're going to get a double swipe on the whole raid and maybe kill a bunch of people, so that's not good. What's really important here, and what I suggest saving your shield walls for, is there's a time when triple puncture lines up with Dire Call from Horadon and with the AoE from the Warlord, so you really need to have a cooldown for that, otherwise it's a one-shot. Once the Warlord dies, Horadon enrages, does a lot more damage. I suggest not standing in the double swipe anymore since it's more damage and you're already getting shit on. And here's just about playing well and chaining CDs. So I do at least what I think is the best possible job at this situation to chain my CDs. As you can see, my AM's running on the right hand side. As soon as that runs out, but not during a double swipe because it doesn't melee during a double swipe, you either have time to build more holy power during that. If you run out of holy power, our off tank's just taunted there in order to get some vengeance, just clever use of game mechanics. So you can see my active mitigation fell off. I popped DP as a result. DP is not that strong, so then I called for a PS as well. As that PS is wearing off, I'm building up my holy power. PS is now worn off. I used my active mitigation again. He's doing a double swipe, so I didn't pop anything. Actually, I called for an IB, but I didn't see his double swipe coming. So IB's up right now, and I'm getting Divine Purpose procs. And now I'm safe with active mitigation again for 5 seconds. Obviously, if you pop something like Iron Bark or DP, and you're at 5 holy power, you should use your holy power and generate more. You should have time enough to get another 5 holy power prior to prior to DP falling off or whatever. Like, just because DP has 5 seconds on it and you're at 5 holy power doesn't mean you should just sit there doing nothing until DP wears off. You have enough time to get a shield on top of that DP and then build up the rest of your holy power for when DP falls off and then have another 5-pointer. In terms of it's obviously try to line up your wings and whatnot with High Vengeance and with Trinket procs, which you can see on the right side under my AM. And yeah, the rest of the fight just becomes, like I said, chaining CDs, don't die, and that's it. It's a pretty simple fight, just a bit longer, pretty healing intensive at times. And yeah, that's all to say about Horadon. Just make sure you get Dispels. As a Paladin tank, you can help with Dispels at Gate 2 and 3. Make sure you Dispel yourself if you get shit, obviously. Drop stacks every 8 to 10, and in the last phase, just chain CDs, and then enjoy loot. That's the whole fight here. We'll be going to Council next. As soon as I'm done looking at loot. I don't know why I recorded that. Okay, so here's Council. Council took a lot longer. Obviously, it was the hardest of the 3 bosses. After a lot of trial and error, which I'm not going to bother explaining, we refined our tactic to what we're doing here. So I get aggro on Marley and Frostlord at the beginning. And then I run away and stack Frostlord and Soul, obviously. Soul is the nastiest when he's empowered, so our whole tactic relied on killing Soul prior to his empower, so that he wouldn't spawn adds. Like, that's the idea we were going for. The reason we don't bring Marley in and cleave her, which we did before, we used to bring her and just stun the ad like 10 yards away from the other bosses and whatever, and it was working fine, is that when she's lower health, she's not a candidate to get empowered later in the fight, and you don't want to deal with like double and triple Khazrajin empowers if you can help it. So we just leave her out of the group, ensure she's the highest health. She's really not a big threat, but that's why I just made sure to get aggro on her initially, so that she's not casting on random people in the raid. Nobody should be dotting her or anything like that, so she just sits there casting on me and doing her stupid ads. Beginning of the fight, heroism, burn Soul as hard as you can. And then once you're getting in danger of Malik charging up and starting to AoE the raid at full power, you switch to him before it gets to a dangerous level and make sure you do his 25% damage and health before he essentially kills the raid. Khazrajin is just going to be running around like shitting on people, and make sure you drop sand traps, which our ranged weren't very good about here. Not near the melee, but obviously we're surrounded by sand traps. Assuming you do kill Soul before the sand ads spawn, doesn't really matter if you combine the sand pools technically, but you should avoid it just in case you don't. After I think about 3 ads from Marley, I think that's the 3rd ad there, what we're going to do is Marley's going to get empowered. She's already empowered, actually. And we're going to drag these two adds over to Marley and then cleave everyone. Because when she's empowered, she doesn't do the healing add. She only does Twisted Fate. And those don't heal an add. So we could just stack all of them, cleave, and be done with it. The hard-hitting boss in this fight is obviously Malik. He hits like a fucking truck, especially when his Frigid Assault is up. The way to deal with Frigid Assault for tank swaps is usually, as a general rule of thumb, taunt when the other tank, like right there, Dot just hit 13 stacks and I taunted. 10 stacks minimum for taunt. He usually gets about, I'd say 25 plus stacks between the two tanks, depending on how lucky you are with your avoidance and if you have an avoidance tank or not. So you taunt at about 10 stacks minimum and make sure, and clench your butt cheeks. Hopefully you don't get 15. I got to 12 there and I taunted at 13, so that's 25 stacks. Whoever is tanking Malik, whoever just got Malik taunted off of him, taunts Sul. So one tank is on Sul, one tank is on Malik, and Marley was on me at all times. Adds are spawning right here for Twisted Fate. You can stun them, you can punt them, you just gotta make sure they die and they don't reach each other. It always targets the farthest person from the raid and then I think the closest person to her. So you can control pretty easily where the adds are. We moved out here because she was done in her Empower, meaning she's spawning healing adds again. And we moved to the other side of the room because there's no sand pools here. Here the idea is to basically, it's a Khazrajin Empower now. By default, after this Empower, it's going to be Sul, because everybody gets empowered once prior to them deciding which ad gets empowered based on health. So it was Malik, then Marley, now it's Khazrajin, and then it'll be Sul. So now our job is to kill Sul prior to Khazrajin losing his Empower. So that both tanks are on Sul right now, and we do quite a bit of damage, as you can see in the scata in the bottom left. So we're burning Sul as hard as we can. People are off-dotting him, but people obviously have to kill Khazrajin too. Khazrajin's a bit tricky because he's pulsing AoE damage on the raid the whole time. And if he reaches 100 energy on top of his passive that he already pulses energy on the raid and reflects damage, you're pretty easily going to have a wipe. So you need to find a good balance between keeping damage on Sul, letting the healers heal the raid up, and killing Khazrajin prior to his full power, getting his 25% down. We were a bit fortunate there that he charged near the tanks. The tanks can help cleave now. And then that's it. So his empowers are done. Sul's about to empower, but he's basically dead. There's his empower, but he died right away, so good for us, no ads. The rest of the fight is really just, just controlling everything now. So Marley's empowered because she had the highest health now. So you go in, just like before, you bring Malik in there, cleave her down, cleave Malik, cleave the adds, keep dotting Khazrajin. You want him as low health as possible. And from here, after this, I think another Malik in power. I can't remember. We'll have to see in a second. We move the adds here just because, get the fuck out of sand, quicksand. There's no reason to be there. Every time Khazrajin charges on top of the tanks in melee like that, use it as a really good opportunity to cleave him. The more damage you can pump on him, the better. As far as tanking in this fight goes, like I said, Frigid Assault is really the only tank swap mechanic you need. Once Sul is dead, the tanks swap between Marley and Malik, whereas before Marley was always on one tank, the tanks were swapping between Sul and Malik. Now it's just Marley and Malik, so you taunt as usual for the Frigid Assault. Make sure when Frigid Assault starts on you, you have a cooldown. His melee hits really hard on top of his Frost, so don't think you could just pop like AMS or Ungloved DP or something and you'll be fine. You need to mitigate both. So you need just a general flat damage percent modifier. Like you need Shield Wall or an AD or Bone Shield or whatever have you, depending on your class. So that's it for the Frigid swap mechanic. Otherwise, you will, if Marley's on you, you will be getting magic damage on you, so just make sure you have any kind of shell or sacred shield on you, up as much as possible. As far as Paladin tanking goes, I took, obviously, Holy Avenger for this fight. Malik's Frigid Assault comes every 1 minute about, meaning every time you're tanking Malik, you should have your Holy Avenger up, because it's every 2 minute, you tank him with 2 minute rotations for 1 minute. So you can pretty much pop Holy Avenger as soon as you taunt Malik and have shield up for most of it, along with your own cooldowns. Once Marley's not empowered anymore here, okay, see, I just taunted Malik and my Holy Avenger's up. I actually don't know why I'm not using it here, but anyway, probably just distracted with random shit and playing badly. Anyway, once once Marley's not empowered anymore, you need to move Malik away from her because she's now spawning healing ads again, okay? So the only time you stack Malik and Sul when he was alive on top of Marley is when she's empowered because there's no healing ads and she spawns an ad that needs to die in melee and melee's there to cleave it anyway. When she's not empowered, Malik needs to be like 20-30 yards away from her. You kill the healing ad, you stun it, you do whatever you want to it, and then you kill it. The only other tricky part is now that you're also DPSing Khazrajin a lot and you have Malik away, if Khazrajin is lower health than Malik, which is very possible, what you want to be really careful because Marley can cast a healing ad when Khazrajin rolls like 5 yards away from her. You guys really have to be on the ball about that and either interrupt and move Marley quickly, or if you can't do that, when she spawns the ad, somebody needs to punt it immediately and then stun it. And kill it before it reaches Khazrajin, because Khazrajin healing is really not a good situation at all. As you can see there, I just interrupted her and moved her away from the raid, because she's about to spawn an ad soon. I think. Anyway, according to the timer, she's about to spawn an ad. And that's really the whole fight. So she's about to die, and then it'll probably be Malik, and then Khazrajin's going to be left over at the end. Usually, at least that's what we've been doing with our kills. It's really the whole fight. In terms of dealing with Frostbite, we kind of just... this was also before Purity got nerfed, but we did it this week with the Purity nerf anyway. You just basically CD and mass heal the person who gets the debuff when Malik's empowered. We also employed a tactic at one point where we just, depending on who it was, we just sacrificed the person and said fuck it, and then just battle res them, but obviously that didn't turn out well all the time. But yeah, we do mass CD and heal through it. It's really not too bad. And with proper rotations, it should be okay. Otherwise, Sul, you don't have to worry about the Empower, assuming you're meeting the DPS check. Malik Empower we talked about, Marley Empower we talked about, and Khazrajin Empower we talked about. So as you can see, Khazrajin's the last one alive here. There's no massive rush. We have a minute on Berserk, so you just want to keep your cool here, and not that we do, because everyone wants to kill it as quickly as possible. But, let the healers catch up. A good time, if Khazrajin empowered, to let the healers catch up on healing is when a healing ad goes out from Marley. Everyone should just swap to the healing ad, go and kill it. Gives the healers a nice minute or two, or not minute or two, but a few seconds to catch up on healing. And that's it. That's the whole fight. It is pretty hectic. There's a lot of damage going out. You just need to, as a tank, you need to, survive, obviously, and then pump out as much DPS on Sul as you can while the raid's dealing with Khazrajin and whatever else, because it was right down to the wire that time, as I'm sure you just saw. Sul died basically as he got empowered. It was really close. When he's empowered, he basically casts his quicksand, or a sandstorm, right away and spawns ads, so it's pretty tight. Yeah, that's it for Council. Not much more to say. Hopefully I covered most of the basics on what we did and tanking and all that, and Tordos should be next. Obviously, by the way, just as I'm looking at loot here, if you guys have questions about any of these fights that I didn't cover in this little video chat, which I'm sure I forgot some stuff because that's just the nature of it, you could just PM me, be like, in the video I saw this, why did you do this?